Hey Optimancers, welcome to week 6 of our wizard builds. So we're doing 10 wizard builds in 10 weeks. I've done the first 5, check them out if you haven't already, but this is week 6. We're going to be talking about the Illusionist. And this build I call the ultimate Arcane Trickster. So there's 2 things I want to talk about before we start the build. The first one is about rogues. So when we are talking about rogues, in my mind, I'm envisioning someone who is good at stealth, sneaking around, good at trickery, good at deception, and can act as a scout for the party. There's a specific role I'm looking for with a rogue, and for me, it's not necessarily just about sneak attack. With sneak attack, of course, it's kind of the premier ability of a rogue. You move in, you make a single attack, and if you hit, you can do a lot of damage with it. And although I think that's effective, and certainly if you enjoy playing a rogue that way, then there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, that's not important to how I envision a rogue. When I'm envisioning a rogue, I expect somebody who has lots of tricks, who can do lots of creative things in combat, not just stab or shoot a bow for a lot of damage. So when I want to play a rogue, I tend not to play a full class rogue. In fact, I very, very seldom play a rogue that I don't multi-class because the sneak attack, it just doesn't speak to me. I want to do things like spells. And when I think rogue, Arcane Trickster is the first one that speaks to me. And if I do play a rogue past level 3, it's almost always going to be an Arcane Trickster because I love the spells, and I think that the spell casting of Arcane Trickster works well with what we would expect a rogue to be able to do. But if I really want to be effective, and if I really want to play the rogue that I want to play, then I really want to go with the build I'm going to show you today, the Ultimate Arcane Trickster, because mixing Illusionist with Rogue really fulfills the things that I think a Rogue should be able to do. We're really going to enhance our ability to hide and move silently. We're really going to enhance our ability to use trickery. We're really going to enhance our ability to contribute to combats in unique and creative ways, rather than just attacks that do lots of damage. But the second thing I want to talk about is illusion. And I think this is important that we talk about this before we get started on the build, because it's going to affect the build, and it should affect whether this is a character that you even want to play. Because illusion is going to work very differently from table to table. Different DMs deal with illusions in very different ways. And this became even more clear to me when I started to do videos where I talked about illusions. I did a video where I did a minor illusion video where I talked about the cantrip minor illusion and the different ways it could be used. I had multiple comments in that video from people who said, but my DM doesn't play with illusions. My DM will just have the NPCs assume it's an illusion when I cast it, or everyone can just identify the spell I'm casting and then they all know it's an illusion. Or even in some cases, my DM has the NPC not only know it's an illusion, but we're going to bypass the investigation roll or the interact with an object to be able to see through it. They just can see through it, so it ends up being useless for me. If you are playing at a table like that, this is not the build for you. In order to play an illusionist and have it be fun, you need the DM on board with having fun with illusions. If the DM is anti-illusion, they can do so many things within their power or house rules that make your character not fun, make the illusions not work, make this character ineffective. Now to the DMs, I'll say this. If you have a player who's excited to play a character that's going to be using illusions, do you think you're accomplishing by sabotaging them? You're going to make it no fun for them. You're going to make it no fun for the rest of your players. You're going to stifle creativity at your own table. And I'm not sure what you think you're getting out of that. Do you think illusions are broken? I do a lot of spell analysis, and I can tell you that even if a DM plays with illusions in a reasonable way, there's no reason to think that they're more powerful than other spells. They just push creativity a little bit more than other spells do. And when you reward that creativity, yes, they are effective spells, but that doesn't mean they're better than some of the best spells in the game that are out there that aren't illusion. Now, I'm not saying you have to have anything unrealistic. If you have an NPC that would reasonably suspect an illusion is being cast, or you don't think that the enemies are all going to run away because they hear a ghost sound of somebody coming, then don't do that. It's okay to have your NPCs act reasonably to different illusions, but I would say that if your player does something creative, I would push things towards it being effective, because this is a good way for pushing that creativity out of that player, and you are going to be rewarded for that by having combats that work differently than any other group you've been playing in. Your players are going to have fun envisioning these different and creative uses of illusion, and I do think you will be rewarded as a DM for doing it. But it's your decision to make. But for players, if your DM is not into illusions and they want to stifle illusions, this is not the build for you. I suggest you look at my other videos for wizards and play one of them instead. But moving into this build, what we are going to assume is that we have a DM that likes illusions, likes creativity, and wants you to have fun. So, let's get started. So we're starting our build here, the Ultimate Arcane Trickster. I've turned off Homebrew and all other setting-specific content. So when we move into race, with this character, I've decided to go with a Kenku. Now, if you wanted to make a character that is similar to this, but you want to make it maybe Adventure League friendly, you don't have to go with Kenku. You could go with any race that provides a bonus to skills. Something like a half-elf would work well. Something like even a variant human would work well. In fact, those races would get the advantage of being able to start with a bonus to intelligence, which the Kenku doesn't have. But the Kenku does get some racial abilities that are unique to Kenku that the other races that don't get, that I think work really well with this build, and that's why I've chosen to go with Kenku. So the first thing is we get our ability score increases, and we get a +2 to dexterity and a +1 to wisdom. So because we don't get a bonus to intelligence, our intelligence is going to lag behind another wizard. And that's really unfortunate. And it's going to be worse because we're multiclassed. Because as soon as we multiclass, we slow down our ability score improvements, so that intelligence is going to lag even a little bit more. And that is a price that is not nothing, but I am willing to pay it here, because I think the advantages here are significant. The dexterity bonus is a good one. +2 to dexterity is great for wizards. Now, when we go into the other racial abilities, I'll explain why I want to go with Kenku here. The first is Expert Forgery. You can duplicate other creatures' handiwork and craftwork. You have advantage on all checks made to produce forgeries or duplicates of existing objects. Now, I've had it, and I assume other people have had it too, that when you use an illusion to create a copy of something, a DM could very reasonably ask you to make some kind of ability score check to determine how accurate your representation is. Do you remember all the fine details? How well do you know the specific history to be able to duplicate this document, or whatever? We might do that with illusion, we might do that with tools. In either case, as a Kenku, we will have advantage on those rolls. The second thing about Kenku is they get 2 additional skill proficiencies. And as I mentioned, this is going to be a character that is going to be doing a lot of different skills. And I want to have proficiency in a lot of different skills. Having 2 additional skill proficiencies is great. And the Kenku skills are all iconic for Rogue. I just took the first 2 on the list, Acrobatics and Deception. I'm going to end up with that entire list proficient with this character at first level. Then this one I really like, and that's Mimicry. Now, if you have never played a Kenku before, they use language very differently than other characters. And I could spend an entire video just talking about role-playing Kenku, because Kenku don't really have their own voice. It's all about mimicking other sounds they've heard. Now, when we're talking about role-playing, that presents a challenge, because if you want to communicate in character, then you have to decide how you're going to do that. You could use sound effects on your phone, you might just role-play it, or you might just do it out of character and say, my character imitates the sound of a cart rolling by, and then whatever else to bring forth what you want to communicate. If you haven't never played a Kenku before and you're not sure how to do it, there are videos and there are documents on the internet. You can look them up. if I wanted to do that, it would just get too in detail for this. I want to talk about the build here. But the ability is mimicry. You can mimic sounds you've heard, including voices. A creature that hears you can tell their imitations with the successful Wisdom Insight check, opposed by your Charisma Deception check. This character is going to be good at deception. So that means that we can essentially add sounds, as long as it's something we're imitating that we've heard before, to our illusions if the positioning is right. I mean, obviously, if I've got an NPC and then my illusionist is on one end of the room and my illusion's on the other end of the room, any sounds I make are not going to sound like they're coming from the illusion. But if I have an NPC and then I have an illusion and then I'm hiding maybe behind the illusion and I imitate a sound, it's pretty reasonable to think that NPC might think that the sound is coming from the illusion rather than from something else. Never mind, I think this is just appropriate thematically for an illusionist to be able to imitate sounds. So we have this ability, and it's not a spell, so we can do it in combination with spells. So I think it's really good for illusionists. It's really the premier reason why I wanted to do a Kenku with this build. So the first class we're going to take with this character is Rogue. Now, the reason I don't take Wizard first is, number one, it would give us the wrong skills because we want to be taking the rogue skills with this character. The second thing is we're going to get more skills by taking rogue first, because by taking rogue first we get 4 class skills. If we take wizard first, we get 2 plus 1 when we multiclass into rogue, so we only end up with 3. The third thing is we're going to get more hit points because we have a D8 hit point instead of D6, and we get our maximum at first level. So there's all kinds of reasons. Ultimately, I can't think of any reason why I would go with wizard first. So we're getting 4 starting proficiencies. I'm going to take stealth, sleight of hand, perception, and investigation. So in addition to our Kenku skills, this gives us really all the basis that we would expect from a rogue. We're also going to get expertise in 2 skills. So I'm going to take stealth and deception. It is tempting to take perception because perception is still probably the skill you're going to roll more than anything else. But when it comes to what this character does, I really want to be good at stealth and deception. So those are the skills that I decided to make this character an expert at. Then we're going to get sneak attack. Now, our sneak attack is never going to go up. But at level 1, 2, 3, that 1d6 makes a significant difference. We can expect to be doing a lot more damage with a ranged weapon than we would with a cantrip with this character, only boosted even more through sneak attack. Also, this character will have melee options as well, and the sneak attack is going to boost those as well. Sneak attack is pretty easy to set up. You just need either advantage or you need an ally within 5 feet of the enemy, and that is not hard to set up. So going into ability scores, I've decided to use a standard array here. Now, if you were to use a point buy, I wouldn't make a whole lot of changes here. This character is actually a little bit hard to set up with our ability scores because, first off, we don't have the +1 to intelligence. Second off, of course, we have 2 secondary ability scores, which are dexterity and constitution, but because we're kind of focusing on the rogue stuff, the dexterity is even more important. It almost becomes a primary ability score. And then we don't want to be dumping on our wisdom or our charisma, because our charisma is our deception, and our wisdom is our perception. It is also a lot of saving throws. Really, the only dump stat we have here is strength. So what I've ended up doing is I put the 8 under strength, the 10 under wisdom, which becomes an 11, so that +1 didn't end up doing much good for us. 12 for charisma to give us a +1 at least in that. 13 in constitution, 14 in dexterity becomes a 16 with a Kenku bonus, and a 15 intelligence. So neither the constitution nor intelligence are right where I want them to be. I'd love those to be 14 and 16, and we're going to have to wait till we get an ability score increase to make that happen. Keep in mind as well, those ability score increases are going to come a little bit later. Now, when it comes to the background, I think the obvious choice here is Charlatan. So Charlatan is a trickster by nature, and we can get 2 skill proficiencies of our choice because we're already duplicating the initial skill proficiencies. So I grabbed Athletics and Arcana. Athletics because it affects both climbing and jumping, which we may have to do occasionally with a rogue kind of character, and Arcana because we are going to be an Arcane Trickster style character. And an Arcane Trickster style character is a rogue who is studious of magic. So Arcana makes a lot of sense. We're going to get tool proficiency in Disguise Kit and Forgery Kit. Now we can often duplicate those things with illusions, but there's no reason why we wouldn't want to have the ability to do it with practical effects as well. can save us spell slots. So I would want to pick up a disguise kit and a forgery kit with this character for sure. So for our starting equipment, we grab our rapier, we grab our shortbow. Ideally, we would want to switch that for a light crossbow when we could, because that'll change our die type on damage from a d6 to a d8, and there's no real downside. And then we are going to start with leather armor. Again, we would want to upgrade that to studded leather when we could. Again, there's no real downside in doing that, but it'll do for now. So when we look at our character first level, it's just a rogue. So a first level rogue can do a little bit of melee. They're probably safer to do ranged because they're not going to have a ton of hit points. They're not going to have a great armor class. So when they can qualify for their sneak attack with a ranged attack, that's usually the better bet for them. But there's no reason they can't go in and hit with a rapier. They do just as much damage. In fact, they do more damage than a short bow using a rapier. But the main thing of a rogue in melee at first level is when it comes to damage, they're one of the best classes because they are adding that sneak attack die. So they end up with just as good a chance to hit, just as much base damage, but then an additional d6 damage. And you can get that sneak attack probably 90% of the time. When it comes to skills, we have a ton of skills. We ended up with 8 starting skill proficiencies. 2 of them are expertise. Our stealth starting score is +7. Our deception starting score is +5. Those are great bonuses for first level. And basically any skill we would expect a rogue to be good at, this character is proficient in. Acrobatics, Arcana, Athletics, Deception, Investigation, Perception, Sleight of Hand, and Stealth. So we're covering all our rogue stuff as well as our Arcane Trickster Arcana ability. So when it comes to skills, I'm not going to worry about them anymore. These ones are just going to build up, and they are the basis of this character. So now we're going to want to bring this character to level 2, and this is when we multiclass into Wizard. There's really no reason why we wouldn't want to grab Wizard as soon as we could here, because it adds just a ton to this character. A second level Rogue would give us Cunning Action, and Cunning Action is going to be useful. It's going to be something we're going to want with this character, so much so that I'm going to come back and grab a second level of Rogue later on. I do think Wizard is bringing us more faster. But for now, what I want to grab with this character is Wizard to get the spells, because now with a second level character we're getting 2 spells per day, plus with Arcane Recovery that's 3 spells per day. That's as much as we would expect with a lot of primary casters. Only land druids and straight wizards are going to be able to cast more spells per day, and potentially sorcerers who use their sorcery points for additional spell slots. But if we're comparing ourselves to a bard or a cleric, we can cast just as many spells as them. Plus we have sneak attack. Plus we have all the skills. It is really nice for this level with this character. It plays well at low levels. So when it comes to our cantrips, we're going to get 3 starting cantrips. There's a lot of cantrips I actually want with this character, but the ones I'm going to grab first, obviously the first one I'm going to grab is Minor Illusion. I'm even going to get a boost with it next level. Never mind the fact that it's appropriate for the character. It's kind of an obvious choice. It would be an obvious choice for any wizard, but for this wizard especially, so it would be really odd not to take it. The second one I'm going to take is Booming Blade, because I think Booming Blade works well with sneak attack and with rogue. Kind of makes me wish even more I had Cunning Action earlier on. I just can't do it right now. And then the final one I'm going to take is Mage Hand, because I think it's appropriate for Arcane Tricksters. Of course, Arcane Tricksters get Mage Hand automatically, and they can do additional things with it, because they can use their Cunning Action with their Mage Hand to do things like do a Sleight of Hand, or pick locks, or a Disable Device as a bonus action. Now, can we use our action to do the same thing with a Mage Hand? That is really going to depend on your DM. It depends on how much fine manipulation a DM figures you can do with a Mage Hand. Technically speaking, the Arcane Trickster ability is to be able to do it with a bonus action, so it doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't be able to do it with a regular action with this character, but again, depends on your DM. So with our first level spells, as usual, the first one I want to grab is Find Familiar. Doubly good for this character because remember, now we have sneak attack, and with our Find Familiar, when we need to, we can use a help action to grant ourselves advantage. So if there's ever a case where we can't do a sneak attack, we could use our Find Familiar, and that would give us our sneak attack as well as advantage on the roll. Never mind the many advantages that Find Familiar give for things like scouting, which is going to be part of the roll for this character. Then I'm going to grab the shield spell. As I mentioned, this character doesn't have a great armor class, but that shield will really boost it. Then I'm going to grab the Fog Cloud spell. I talked about Fog Cloud with the last character, and I'm going to take it with this one as well. This character, of course, can't do a hide as a bonus action. Another time when Cunning Action would be lovely to have. But Fog Cloud still is useful because it gives us a place we can hide without having to worry about finding cover because the enemies can't see us. It also, I talked about the various advantages it has. I've also done a dedicated video to Fog Cloud. So if you want to check that out, feel free. But I do think it is a good fit for this character. Then with this character, I'm going to grab Disguise Self. I think Disguise Self is especially good for a Kenku because we can already imitate the voice of somebody else. So if we want to mimic someone else, we can use Disguise Self to look like them and then use our mimicry ability to sound like them. So we're better at doing that than another race would be. Then I'm going to grab Grease. This is going to be my big gun spell at first level. You can cast it under enemies. It can hit multiple enemies. If they fail a saving throw, they fall prone. Any enemy that moves into the area will also have to make a saving throw or fall prone. This can be used to slow down enemies, but it can also be used to grant your allies advantage on attacking them when they're prone. Then I'm going to take Absorb Elements. Probably not something I'm going to prepare at this level, but it's something I want to have later on because I will be preparing it later on. So I'm just going to invest in it now so it's ready for me in my spell book. So that's my 6 starting spells. So when we go into our preparations, what we end up is we can do 3 preparations here. I am going to want to definitely prepare Shield, and I am definitely going to want to prepare Grease because that's going to be my big gun spell. And that leaves me either Disguise Self or Fog Cloud. I'd say generally I'd want Fog Cloud and Disguise Self if I know I'm going to need it. So tactically with this character, we can play it very similar to the way we played it at first level. We're still doing more damage than other party members. If we have melee and we think we can get that secondary damage with the Booming Blade, we can potentially even do more damage because then we would be doing the D8 plus 3 from the Rapier, plus the D6 from the Sneak Attack, plus the D8 from the secondary Booming Blade damage. But that would require our enemy moving, and we don't always know when that's going to happen. In general, I still think it's a good idea to stay at range and pepper things with a light crossbow. Or if you don't have a light crossbow yet, your short bow is fine. Then, as a first level wizard, we have our standard stuff. Get hit with an attack, we can use our shield spell, and we can use our grease for a big gun spell, or we can use our fog cloud in the situations where we need a place to hide, we want to take away advantage from enemies, all that kind of stuff. So at 3rd level, I just want to talk a little bit about one option we could do here is just go ahead and take the 2nd level of Rogue now, get our Cunning Action. It makes our Fog Cloud better. It makes our Booming Blade better. But the problem with it is it's slowing everything down. It slows down our access to our really good spells. It slows down our access to our ability score increases. These are important for this character. As much as Cunning Action is tempting, I do think we're better off going with Wizard for quite a while yet. So that 2nd level of Wizard, we can now become an Illusionist. The ability for the Illusionist at 2nd level basically boosts our ability to use Minor Illusion. When you use this school at 2nd level, you learn the Minor Illusion cantrip. We already have this cantrip. It says if you already know this cantrip, you learn a different wizard cantrip of your choice. The cantrip doesn't count against your numbers of cantrips known, so that's great. We get an additional cantrip, and this character can use a lot of different cantrips. When you cast Minor Illusion, you create both sound and image with a single casting of this spell. So normally with a Minor Illusion, you do one or the other. So this is kind of like twinning it. Now, if you don't know how to use Minor Illusion effectively, I'm linking a video right now where I talk about Minor Illusion because you really should think about that. This is going to be a mainstay of this character at lower levels. And being able to do both of those things is pretty good for this character. Now, D&D Beyond, for some reason, doesn't seem to give me the extra cantrip, but I get an extra cantrip at this level. So I'm just going to unprepare Minor Illusion because we have it prepared automatically as an Illusionist. And then what I'm going to be grabbing is the Message cantrip. I think this is really nice for this character because it gives us the ability to communicate at range without other people listening in on the conversation. I think that as a character that's going to be using a lot of sneaking and hiding and deceiving of enemies, being able to communicate secretly with the party is of great value. we're going to get 2 additional first level spells. I'm just going to make them both rituals, and then I don't have to worry about preparing them. And there's 2 I think can be really useful here. The first is Unseen Servant. So Unseen Servant we can use in a very similar manner to Mage Hand, except we can do it at a longer range, it lasts longer, and we can do it at the same time as a Mage Hand because neither require concentration. So it allows us to move things around that we're not near. So if we're hiding somewhere, we can potentially still do things like steal stuff without revealing ourselves. The other one I want to take is Detect Magic. I think it's a pretty important ritual to have, especially if no one else has it. So we get 1 additional preparation. That means we can have both our Disguise Self and our Fog Cloud prepared. So we will have 1 additional spell at this level. So now we can cast 3 first level spells, plus we can still recover 1 with Arcane Recovery. So potentially 4 first level spells a day. But largely with this character, I'm still doing attacks with range attacks and melee attacks because I'm getting that boost from sneak attack. So it's still comparable to the other members of the party. And it probably will be comparable until level 5. Once level 5 hits and some of those other characters are getting things like additional attacks, then our attacks aren't going to keep up. But from 1 through 4, we're just as good at doing damage as anybody else in the party. Now, our defense isn't as good, but if we've got studded leather, we're up to a 15 armor class, become a 20 if we cast a shield spell, so that's pretty good. And then also we have our tricks. So if we want to use spells, we can do things like the Fog Cloud or the Grease spell, but a lot of the time we might want to use that minor illusion spell because remember, we're essentially twinning it. We're getting 2 effects for the price of 1. So this character already has a ton of tricks as well as a ton of skills. So our 3rd level wizard is going to bring us access to 2nd level spells. So we're going to grab 2 2nd level spells. The first one I'm going to take is Dark Vision. So Dark Vision, because I'm playing a race that doesn't have Dark Vision, I can give myself Dark Vision for 8 hours without concentration. So I do think this is a nice addition for this character. The second one I'm going to take is Mirror Image, because Mirror Image gives us basically 3 attacks that otherwise would potentially hit us, we can turn into automatic misses. So Mirror Image for a character that doesn't have a strong defense normally is a really nice addition. So when I go back to my first level spells, I'd probably unprepare Disguise Self unless I had reason to believe I was going to need it. Then going into my 2nd level spells, I would prepare both Dark Vision and Mirror Image. So for 4th level, when it comes to combat, not a lot changes, except we have the option of that Mirror Image for defense. The Dark Vision really is basically utility. So for the most part, this character is going to play very similarly at 4th level that it did to 3rd level. So that's this character from levels 1 through 4. Now, with these builds, what I do is I separate them into 3 different spots. So if you want to see my next levels from 5 through 10, you can click the link down below in the video description or in the comments section. And the next section will be 5 through 10, and the one after that will be from 11 through 20.